So as the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin gets underway, the Justice Department is once again under scrutiny for its stance on policing. During her confirmation hearings, President Biden's pick for Associate Attorney General, Vanita Gupta, has been grilled by lawmakers for her views on the matter and whether or not she supports broader federal civil rights investigations into police departments like the one in Minneapolis. Gupta has also been challenged on her shifting views on defunding law enforcement agencies. So Sadie Gurman is a Justice Department reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and she joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. Just as an aside, the phrase defunding, the police, I think is so misleading. It is the phrase that's being used, but I think it doesn't accurately describe the conversation that's actually happening about reform within policing here in this country. But that's an aside. How will the outcome of Chauvin's trial impact the Department of Justice?
Well, the Chauvin trial taking place at the state level right now will also put sort of the focus on police accountability measures, and in particular, what the federal government can do to hold police departments accountable. And so, depending on the outcome of the state trial, there will be a lot of pressure on the Justice Department to pursue either civil rights charges against the officers involved in George Floyd's killing, and also to take a deeper look at the entirety of the Minneapolis Police Department through what is known as a pattern or practice investigation that seeks to root out systemic misconduct, systemic unconstitutional conduct, civil rights violations, that type of thing. And activists have been calling for this type of investigation for a while now. It was something that the Trump administration was loath to do, but something that the Biden administration has already said it is prepared to explore that possibility. So those are some things you could be expecting at the federal level after the state trial wraps up.
Last month, the New York Times reported that the DOJ reopened its investigation into Chauvin's actions. So explain to our viewers, what exactly is this federal investigation and what's it looking into?
So right now there is a federal grand jury impaneled in Minneapolis that has subpoenaed several witnesses and is specifically examining Officer Chauvin's actions in relation to Floyd's killing. And that is a civil rights violation. They are looking at whether he violated George Floyd's rights through that encounter back in May, and that is what the grand jury investigation is looking at right now. Now, there's a policy in the Justice Department that gives deference to state investigations, and so we should not expect just the impaneling of a grand jury to mean that we will have an outcome at the federal level anytime soon. But it is a sign that the Biden administration has reinvigorated this investigation.
Some officials in the Justice Department pushed to open an investigation into excessive force complaints against the Minneapolis Police Department after Floyd's death last year. But then Attorney General Bill Barr opposed the plan. What is the difference between a pattern or practice review and a federal grand jury investigation?
So the Justice Department has the authority, its civil rights authority allows it to examine the conduct of entire police departments to see, if there are patterns of excessive force or patterns of discrimination in policing that just a federal grand jury examination of a specific officer's actions might not pick up. So the Justice Department can go in and essentially hold entire cities accountable for police misconduct. This was something, as you mentioned, that former Attorney General Bill Barr was reluctant to do. He thought, even after the urging of civil rights officials within his own department, that it would be damaging to officer morale in Minneapolis, even though there had been some indications that there might have been a pattern of excessive force within that police department. But the former Attorney General had said at the time that he thought it would be actually more trouble and more harm than it was worth. That said, it is an open question whether the Biden administration will pick that up again, but it is certainly something that's on the table.
Some groups have accused President Biden's nominee for Associate Attorney General nominee, Vanita Gupta, of being anti-law enforcement, despite receiving endorsement from a number of law enforcement organizations, including the nation's largest police union. So what are her plans for the department if she's confirmed? And Anne-Marie pointed out that people use this term, defunding the police, which isn't exactly what it means on the face of it. Where does she stand when it comes to police reform?
So Gupta was head of the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department during the Obama administration, and at that time she took an aggressive stance in terms of police reform. Her department under her leadership opened a number of these pattern and practice investigations. And then when she left the department, she became the head of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, which is a Washington-based advocacy group that took very strident positions on issues like policing and immigration, and was often a vocal critic of Trump administration policies. But during her confirmation hearing, she said, I don't support defunding the police. In fact, throughout my history, my entire career, she said, that she had actually supported giving police departments additional resources for things like body-worn cameras and officer wellness programs. And, law enforcement groups, including some of the most powerful police unions in the country, have said they support her even-handed approach, what they see as somebody who is willing to meet them halfway and come to the table with them, even when they don't always agree on matters of policing. They view her as somebody who will incorporate them into the conversation. So while some conservatives are very skeptical of what she will do in terms of policing and other civil rights issues like religious liberty and that type of thing, she has said, I'm a civil rights lawyer, but I'm also a pragmatist, and I'm willing to come to the table on these issues.
Sadie, I want to ask you a question about another issue that has been sort of part of the national conversation now, this idea of what rises to the level of a hate crime. We've seen the DOJ announce hate crime charges in several cases, including a Louisiana man who's accused of plotting to kidnap and kill gay men. But some officials are calling for hate crime charges to be brought against the suspect in the Atlanta spa shootings. Can we talk a little bit about whether or not a hate crime law can be used in this case, and what sort of challenges prosecutors face when making a case like that, when trying to determine if something should be called a hate crime?
That's right. And at the federal level, especially, bringing a hate crimes charge and proving a hate crimes charge is a challenge because not only do you have to prove, a suspect's intent, you have to prove their motivation. So prosecutors would have to find some piece of evidence that suggested that this gunman specifically targeted these people because of a hateful motive toward Asian people. And given what we have heard as the suspect's confession, it's going to be a little bit challenging. The FBI at this point has said it is serving in an assisting role. It is not taking the lead. It is helping the local investigation, which suggests that at this point, they don't necessarily see a federal hate crime charge. That could change, and certainly there is a lot of pressure for the Justice Department to intervene, but so far we haven't heard that is happening, and that is something that is definitely frustrating, particularly to Asian Americans. There is a high bar for bringing a hate crimes charge, and we've seen this in other cases as well, but in this case, what we've heard described as the suspect's confession might make things even more challenging.
All right. Sadie Gurman, always great to have you. Thank you very much for your reporting and analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you.